Now that we've got our bones connected to our mesh, and we go into pose mode, and we can confirm that our object is deforming just by doing that. The next step that we'll take, or at least the next thing that we'll expose here, we won't do a lot with it, is just the notion of weights for our bones. And weight for bones is really the influence that a bone has over its nearby geometry. So to show you what I'm talking about, I'm going to bend each of these bones just a little bit. I'm going to bend them on this, this green axis. And I'll do my best to make this quick. We'll just kind of make this like U-shape bend, kind of pool noodle, as I've said a few times. Now, with this done, if we go back into object mode, and then we do a selection, we're going to grab the armature and the sphere. We can then go back up to our mode selection, and this is a little bit confusing if you're new to Blender, but you have to go into object mode, select your objects, and then it gives you the option to get into what is called weight painting mode. So go ahead and do that, and you'll see that there's kind of like a rainbow impact colorization on our object now. And what this rainbow does is it's trying to communicate the influence that a particular bone has over a particular area. And if you did these steps precisely right, you should be able to select your bones just by clicking on them within your scene here. Sometimes you can get your selections a little bit itchy and it doesn't allow you to select bones, or sometimes Blender can be a little bit stuck. So as a reminder, you want to grab your armature and your sphere in object mode and then switch to weight paint, and that'll allow you to kind of select both of them when you're in weight painting mode more reliably. So now as I page through these, or just kind of select through these, you can see that there's elements of green, yellow, blue, and sometimes red. And what this means is blue is an area of no influence. So if I bend this bone, let's give this a try. So I bend this bone, and you can see that this bone doesn't do anything to these polygons over here. There's no influence. Dark, deep, navy blue. However, this bone controls 100% of this red area. If you notice, if I bend this bone, how much of that tip is controlled? 0. Why? Because red is showing that this end bone has complete control over that end area. Now, the yellow is a little bit less influence, green is a little bit less, light blue, and so forth. So if you think about this, red at 100, yellow at 75, green at 50, light blue at 25, and dark blue at 0. Just this kind of a quick kind of understanding. So now I'm rotating this one, and what happens? It's influencing these polygons, but note that it's also a parent of this bone. So these polygons are moving. They don't just stay where they are. Because this is a parent chain, when I rotate these, they're still going to move the bones at the end of the chain. They just won't deform the polygons. Make sense? All right. Now, weight painting mode. This is a method of influencing or adjusting how much power these bones have over their neighboring geometry. Let me show you what I mean. This right now, this bone has 100% control over these end polygons. However, if I go into draw mode, keep in mind I'm still in weight paint. I've clicked on this paintbrush to go into draw mode. I get a few options. I get the weight. Do I want it to be 100% influenced? 75, 50, 25, right? Do I want this to be red? Do I want this to be yellow? Do I want this to be green, light blue, etc.? So I get my weight control. So right now I'm painting red weight. Keep that in mind. The radius, how big of an influence do I want? See this big circle here. Do I want to paint a whole bunch or a little bit? And how much strength? Do I want to paint 100% of weight 100, or do I want to paint like, you know, it's like opacity almost for your paintbrush for your Photoshop fans. All right, so I'm going to keep strength up 100% just to see what happens. I'm on my final bone here, and I'm now painting influence. Look at all this influence I'm painting. And so I've painted all this red influence. Now, why has it ruined my shape? Well, because it took the influence from these three bones, which initially said curve smoothly, and it put it on this one, meaning now if I rotate this bone, see how it's controlling all of those red polygons? That's what we told it to do. So you have to be careful about weight painting, and you kind of have to be patient with yourself. It's not a very intuitive process, I found, and there's a lot of trial and error that's necessary in order to get it to look good. So I'm actually pretty okay with the weight painting here in this particular example, but I just want to show it on a simple mesh so that you can understand how it works. Now you can paint negative influence. If I set my weight to 0, strength to 100, and I paint here, what do you think is going to happen? Sure enough, we take away all of the influence of that final bone on that end piece. Now you might need to go, depending on your settings, you might need to go into a few different places and kind of paint. And it looks like I've still got some like required influence down there. But then I can go into the move tool and go to a different bone and just see if there's any other bones that have that influence on that edge. Looks like it's just this guy. So I should be able to paint that winked out. It's just, I think there's a bit of a view issue. So I'm back into my draw mode. I'm painting 0% weight, and it's not letting go. So what I can do then is I can go to a different bone, say this one, and I can paint 100% influence and give all that influence to that bone. That way it kind of steals it from the other. So now you can see it's cleared up. So two ways of getting weight from one spot to another. You can paint it on one bone, or you can give that weight to another bone, and that's kind of a way to kind of force your intentions if Blender's not cooperating. So now, if I've done this correctly, that last bone shouldn't do much of anything. Right? It's just flopping around. It doesn't have any influence over any bones. Now, if I want to give it back some influence, go back to the draw mode, weight's 100, and I can paint that back in and move around my view a little bit, and it looks like my my noodle is kind of back to the way it was by painting that influence. Now there's some other tools here. There is a blur tool, which I'm quite fond of, and the blur tool with the heavy strength, it's going to smooth out the influence among your many bones. So I might go back to my selection tool, back to blur tool, and just notice how it's softening that blend between light blue and red. That's important, in my opinion, to getting smoother deformation across many bones. So you might just want to make it a process and a practice of going through and doing a blur on all of your bones, just as kind of a fine tuning. So you can see as I'm doing this, I'm getting a little bit more of a perfect smooth like torus shape. Let's look at this bone here. See that little pinch? I bet if I go down there and I grab these, there's a lot of influence fighting there. If I just start to smooth that out from this guy, you probably need to do it on both sides. And then select this bone. There's a lot. See how there's like that really intense yellow, high influence? We can blur that out, make it a little bit green, and it's just smoothing out that influence. So that way these deformations are softer between your bones, and it'll result in a little bit more of that smoother curve. So if that's what you're after, just know that you got to do a little bit of blurring to get that done. Now there's some other tools here. There's averaging, which can like average your influence across the many bones. So it's kind of like a super blur. Sometimes that gets a little bit too much of a blur between things, too much of a blend. So I don't use it a ton. You've got smear, which I think is a little bit, it's like, I don't really know why they would have this in there. It seems, if you just want a really harsh blur, if the blur's not giving you enough change, maybe the smear helps. And then you've got a gradient, which is kind of nice. So you can just draw like a gradient to show that influence. You can see here. So it basically paints from heavy to no influence just by drawing this line. Which is kind of wild to see and to play around with. If your object's already deformed, gradient, not so useful because I've already got it bent here. But if this was a straight line, the gradient can be potentially very useful. And then you can sample weight. So if you know the weight you want, you can sample it here, and then you can paint that weight just based on its exact influence. So that's weighting in a nutshell. It's a process where if you don't like exactly how things are looking, you may have to jump into when you're working with your character. For the most part, auto weights are going to get you what you need. And this is just a way to fine tune as you build expertise and you build kind of your personal preference on how you want things to look. You might spend a lot of time in the weighting tools within Blender.